Looky what we have here. Inbox Sony amplifier from way back in the day. Let's flip back. 1991. Car Audio and Electronics Directory. You know how we like to pull out the directories and check them out? Sony had 7 amplifiers listed this year ranging from $80 up to $550. We're going to take a look at the Sony XM-3040F, which retailed for $360 back in 1991, equivalent to around $800 today. It's a lot of money for a 4-channel amp. Here's a Sony 1990 brochure we found with the Sony XM-3040. This is a previous model from 1990, rated 30x4 or 70x2 bridged, or 30x2 plus 70x1. Now I found this XM-3040F on eBay. It said it was complete in box, which it actually was. Included the amplifier and a manual, including the packing materials as well to keep the amp nice and safe. Here is the manual. Very cool. I will have this scanned. You can look it for a link in the video description. If you need to have a scan of this, I will gladly provide that. Also, the box here, you can see it provides specifications, some of the different settings. Also, on the back, it has a cutout that you can pull off, which is a template for mounting the amplifier, as well as some more specifications. We'll get to those in a little bit. Here is the amplifier. Not a whole lot going on to this one. Let's take a closer look. Before we do that, real quick public service announcement. If you have an amplifier that has screw-down terminals, make sure you tighten them before you ship it. These actually came out, but they were still in the box, luckily. Let's get those reattached, tighten them down nice and firm. Here you can see the Sony logo. This is from 1990, 1991 time frame when Sony was known for Walkmans and all kind of stuff. They were actually really popular in electronics. They were kind of the high end for the consumer market back in the day. This 1991 model has more of a grayish tone than the previous 1990 versions, but here you can see all the connections are on one side of the amp, including 4 RCA inputs. They call them A, B, C, and D instead of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Also, we have the speaker connections here. Everything is via screw-down terminals. It's a 4-channel amplifier. You can make it 3-channel, 2-channel, or 4-channel. Also has a 30-amp ATC fuse, remote 12-volt, and ground via the screw-down terminals. So you can use the fork terminals to connect these up, make it all nice and clean. Here on the opposite side, we have the adjustments for the inputs as well as the crossover filter. You can see you can adjust between mono, stereo, or C plus D. You have off, high pass, and low pass for the filter. The crossover filters are 80 Hz, 18 dB per octave, and also level control for each channel. On the far right side, you'll see we have a power LED and a protector LED. Not protection, protector. It also lists the 30 watts by 4 at 0.08% THD. Does not give a specific voltage, even in the manual, to say what it's rated at, but it does say that it is regulated, so it should do approximately the same power from around 11 volts up to about 15. Now on the bottom, you can see we have made in Japan, the serial number there, and also we have a really cool little diagram which explains how the inputs work and also how the speaker outputs work and the crossover settings. It's very useful. Now we will get to the internals of the amp, that's later in the video. The dimensions 12.2 inches by 8.8 by 2.2, which is kind of large for a 30 watt by 4 amplifier. Specifications 30 watts per channel at 4 ohms with 0.08% distortion. Now what's really interesting is in the other specs it gives maximum power output as 80 watts by 4 at 4 ohms, but it does not specify the 2 ohm rating or the 4 ohm bridge rating RMS. It just gives max power. So let's get this amp hooked up, see if it actually works. Fingers crossed here. We'll flip the switch here to turn it on. You can see both lights come on, and after about 2.5 seconds we get power. That's right, we're good to go. So let's hook it up to the good old SMD DeMoore Engineering Amplifier Dyno to test the power output of this amp. On the left, you'll see the RMS power output in watts. In the middle, the ohm load. On the right, the voltage of the dyno. We'll also have the remote clamp indicator so we can calculate efficiency.
This here's my favorite part.
As usual, we'll start with a 4-channel test. 4 ohms is rated 30 watts by 4 at 0.08. We won't be able to go that low. We go to 1% distortion. Certified test first, up to that 1% distortion. And yeah, easily get the 30 watts by 2 at 13.65 volts. Now let's try the uncertified test, which takes us up to the clipping point. And as with a lot of amplifiers, There's not much difference. Hardly any difference between the 1% distortion and clipping, which means when the amp gives up, it just really runs out of power and gives up. Now dynamically, it does give some more power. You can see here the mid 50s per channel at about 13.8. Efficiency wise, these old class AB amps, we expect around 50%, and that's what we get here. Now, let's try 2 ohms 4-channel. It's rated 80 watts by 4 max, so we don't know what the RMS power output is, but according to the previous model, it's around 70 watts per channel, and that's very close to what we got. We got about 67 watts if you average the 2 channels at 14.13. Now let's try uncertified tests, and if I didn't mention it, all these tests are done at 1 kilohertz. Let's see here, 73 and 64, so again about 68, 69 watts per channel average at 14.13. Dynamically, the 1 kilohertz burst tone, again this amp kind of shines a little bit as far as the numbers go. About 90 watts per channel dynamically at 14.25. Now we're going to switch to the 2-channel test because we had some issues with the clamp which did not give us proper measurements. So let's try 4 ohms bridge. It's rated 180 watts by 2 max. Let's see what we get here. 1 kilohertz test track. Yeah, about 110 watts per channel at 14 volts. Not too bad for an old school amp. Now let's try uncertified. Not a whole lot of difference going on here. Again, about 110 watts per channel, 14.1. Then we'll try dynamic and see if it stands up as it did before, providing quite a bit more dynamic. And yep, as far as the numbers go, definitely pumps out some more. Now, as far as decibel watts go, this is not a big difference from what we saw before, but still around 174 watts per channel. Efficiency dipped to 40%. So yeah, it's actually wasting a lot of the input power to heat. It is what it is. As far as the results, I've shown here, shown you all these tests already. For the bridge results, I did not show the 8 ohm bridge, so I'm showing it here. We got about 90 watts per channel or so bridged at 8 ohms. So very nice overall. Now let's try what's inside. Take off the bottom plate of these amps. It is Japan goodness. There's some good quality components in here, as you'll see. So we'll take the 8 screws off the bottom. There's 2 separate bottom panels here. Each come off individually. I guess this is for repairing. I'm not really sure why they did it this way. But anyway, let's get to the amp. You guys may be asking, why in the heck are you wearing gloves? Well, it's because I'm fancy.
Pardon me, would you have any Grey Poupon? But of course.
All right, big dummy, let's get inside the amp so you can see it. Yeah, there is a plethora of wiring here, but you will notice some relays. There's also some big capacitors there. And as far as the power supply capacitors go, 2200 microfarad, 16 volt. So you definitely don't want to feed this amp more than 16 volts. But check out these Rubicons, 35 volt, 10,000 microfarad for the outputs. That's a lot of reserve there. That explains maybe the good output for the dynamics. Now let's move on to the pros and cons of this 30-year-old plus amplifier. First off, it did rated power for the most part. High quality components, Rubicon, capacitors, etc. Screw down terminals. Does have an 80 hertz high pass, low pass crossover at 18 dB per octave, 4-channel, 3-channel, 2-channel mode. 30-year-olds plus and still working, and it sounds amazing. Now what about things to consider? Class AB low efficiency, standard RCAs, no Tiffany, no RCA outputs to feed another amp, confusing settings for the input switches. You really have to read the manual or look at the bottom of the amp. It is more than 30 years old, so you might need to get it recapped. Also some more thermal paste applied. Max power ratings in the manual, not sure why Sony did that. Not really known to do that back in the early 90s. But anyway, there you have this Throwback Thursday test of the Sony XM-3040F. If you guys like these videos, make sure you support me at patreon.com/oldschoolstereo. Much appreciated. Till next time, Big D, I'm out of here. All right, Sony 4-channel. Let's try in the 4-channel mode at 4 ohms with lower voltage around mid 12s. See what we get here. See if we still get this 30 watts by 4. Yes, we do. About 33 watts per channel at 12.75.